Hello, everyone. Welcome to She Knows Arsenal. We have a live show for you today. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel. We are primarily going to focus on Arsenal transfer news, which I know you guys love. And we are going to talk about Juventus starting talks with Thomas Partey in London. We're also going to talk about the groundwork that Arsenal have done to sign Usman Diomande from Sporting. We're also going to talk about the updates around Ruben Neves and Douglas Luiz. So I know you guys are super interested in those things. So again, make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, and get into the chat and let me know what you guys are thinking and feeling. I'm sure you guys are excited for the end of the international break. I know I'm excited for the end of the international break. I am ready for Arsenal to come back. Now, I'm saying this now. Because there was no game. But I may be thinking, you know what? Maybe we could go back to that international break because Arsenal, as an Arsenal fan, you know it's stressful watching us. In terms of Arsenal players over international break, I think so far, so good. Nothing to worry about just yet. Martinelli scored his first goal for the Brazilian national team against Colombia in a game where Brazil were diabolical. Martinelli was good. Gabriel also played in that game. He was taken off once they conceded the second goal. But all in all, I think both players made a good account of themselves. And all three of our Gabbies are set to start against Argentina on Tuesday, which, if you guys haven't watched the show that I did earlier, the morning show, if you guys want to look more on like what's going on international team wise with the team, go back to that show because I spoke about my thoughts around those three starting, Saka and Declan Rice coming in to save England, all those types of things. Trossard scored today for Belgium, which is no surprise because he's all end product. The guy is all end product and he's in good form. So whether or not Arteta decides to capitalize on that form, we will see. Oh, I forgot my little overlay. There we go. But who else? Who else? Somebody else scored. No, that's it. Saka assist. Declan Rice robbed of a goal, a really nice goal by VAR for an offside on Harry Kane. Whatever. Kivior, I think, played well for Poland, but Poland are not very good, so it is what it is. And yeah, that looks like that's it pretty much for international football regarding Arsenal players. Let me see what you guys are saying. Maman says Trossard baller, fire. MM says if Mikel drops Trossard, I mean, it really depends on who's available and who's fit. I think we all can accept at this stage that Trossard is the 12th man off the bench. He is the sixth man. If you're thinking about basketball, you guys know the sixth man is super important. It's the guy that comes off of the bench. That's the first guy off of the bench, super important to the team. I'm comfortable with Trossard being that guy, because I think when Gabriel Jesus, Saka, and Martinelli are all fit and firing, Trossard is probably the fourth player that you would choose. Where it becomes a little bit more unforgivable is when you have Eddie and Nketiah starting in front of Trossard through the middle. I don't think that ever made sense. I don't think it ever really sat right with me personally because the gulf in quality between the two players is massive. And when we saw Trossard play in that position when Gabriel Jesus was first injured, he actually did really well. So for me, I think capitalizing on Trossard's form may end up being a little difficult if all the players up front, our starters, are available. But, I still expect him to be the first guy off the bench. And if we want to rest somebody, I expect him to be the one that steps in. Hugo says, how about our women's team? Arsenal women beat Brighton 3-0 today. A really big away result, especially because Arsenal women were able to get a clean sheet, which has eluded us for about 8 games now. And Caitlin Ford scored, Frida Hansen-Monum scored, and also Stina Blackstenius scored as well. So Arsenal women are second in the table, 3 points behind Chelsea, and are looking a lot better than they did on the first day of the season when they lost to Liverpool. Akau says we need Partey to recover and help us to win. I miss his long line breaking passes and his relationship with Saka and Odegaard that helps us control games. I mean, you guys know how I feel about that. He has to be fit, so I'm not gonna hold my breath. Hugo says Cooney Cross. What a player. Johnny J. Wick says, evening, Jess. International breaks makes me lose focus on real football. Roll on to Saturday. I agree. Wayne Francis says, on a separate note, women's team got a clean sheet today. Exactly. And Kyra Cooney Cross is the player of the match, as I like to call her, Baby Rice. It's kind of like moving away from Jorginho and bringing in Declan Rice. That's kind of how I equate, bringing in Cooney Cross in, because Leah Walty is one of the best DMs in world football, in European football. So I don't want to slight her in any way, and I think she's been really, really good for Arsenal women. But when you look at Cooney Cross, she can do a lot of the same things that Walty does, on the ball, but she's more of a athletic, robust player that can get about the pitch, and she's press resistant as well. Like, I do think that that's the natural transition for Arsenal women, and I'm happy to see it. T01 says, question, what player profiles would you say are similar between the men's and women's team for Trossard, Palova, Vieira? For me, yeah, like I said, somebody else already said it, but like Kyra Cooney Cross is probably a Declan Rice, and Leah Walty is probably more of a Jorginho. Little is probably the Odegaard of the team, somebody that really orchestrates from that number 10 position, but can play a little bit deeper, can control tempo, can kind of do everything, scores goals, does penalties, all that kind of stuff. Those are the ones that I can think of off the top of my head. I used to think McCabe was kind of similar to Kieran Tierney, but Kieran Tierney is not at Arsenal at the minute, so there's that. And when it was Leah Williamson and Rafa, I thought that was very similar to Ben White and Gabrielle. So there's that. C. Walder says, if there's any hint on how much Juventus are likely to offer. So we're going to go ahead and get into that. There's 83 of you guys in here, which is amazing. So make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. Somebody is saying that Trossard scored twice. I only saw I think his second goal, but good for him. Trossard, that's my guy, so Wayne Francis, exactly. Lena Hurtig is Kai Havertz. I was saying that the other day to my friend. I saw some other people tweeting it. It is true. It is definitely true. Also, yeah, Ford is probably similar to Martinelli because they're very underrated, but they're integral to the team and they always come up with the big goals. So there you go. Let's start off with Thomas Partey. So this is coming from Santi JFM. Before people start, getting all upset with me about the source, they don't know anything. How could you say that? Santi J is pretty reliable, and he's saying that Juventus want Thomas Partey on loan this winter, and Cristiano Giantoli was in London in recent days to meet the player. This rumor has been rumbling on for a while. If you guys remember, in the summer window, Thomas Partey was linked to Juventus then, but Juventus only wanted to pay like 20 million and Arsenal were looking for 40 million. Now, of course, like the typical Italian bums that they are, they want a freaking loan in the middle of the season. Now, this all makes me feel very skeptical about Thomas Partey's injury. I thought it was strange that he was on the bench against Chelsea and then magically was unavailable versus the Sevilla game. And so I wonder, maybe I'm speculating here. I'm 100% speculating here now that I think about it, but is Thomas Partey really injured? Is he really injured? Did him and Mikel Arteta have a falling out? It's strange to me that now he has an injury that's going to keep him out till January, but he's being linked to a move away, which is really strange to me, to be honest. But here's the thing. You guys, if you've been on the channel for a while, you guys know my feelings on this is that if he was going to be unavailable for October, November, December, then I do feel like you have to look at the market and see if you can bring somebody in more reliable so that we have another midfielder available to us. Earlier on, when I think a lot of us assumed that Thomas Partey would be fit and ready to go by October, the striker situation was the most pertinent. It was the top of the agenda. But if he's not available, then Arsenal definitely need to go out there and look for somebody. Now, should Arsenal be loaning Thomas Partey to Juventus? Probably not. Especially if he's fit enough to play for them, then he's probably fit enough to play for us. But if he's pushing for a move, there were rumors out there that he wants a move. Arsenal were open to letting him go. Maybe it's just a natural separation. Like I said before, Thomas Partey is a quality player. So if he feels as though his influence on the team and his importance is waning due to Declan Rice's, introduction into this team, then I would not be surprised if he wanted to go to a different team as soon as possible. Or maybe he's already been told, like, look, listen, you are not the number one guy here anymore. And so, not that we want you to go, but don't expect to start every single game. And if he's not starting every single game when he's fit, then maybe it's something that he's not really that interested in. And maybe a slower league like Italy would be better for a player that I think really struggled to adapt to the pace of the Premier League. Despite what people keep yelling at me about, he's a fantastic player, blah, blah, blah. We know that. I don't think anybody is questioning Thomas Partey's quality. It's just the level to which people speak about him. We have not seen that as often as we probably should have, especially when you're looking at a player that you spent 45 million on with a release clause, by the way. That is different than staggering payments over a long period of time, and is on 250,000 pounds per week. Those types of wages and that type of investment should go to a player that plays 90% of the games, and right now we're getting about, on average, maybe 50% of the games per season. Altogether in all three of the seasons that he's been here. And so again, like, it's really not about his quality. It's just about, can Arsenal risk their season on the likelihood of Thomas Partey being fit? I don't think that they should. I don't think that it's almost like expecting a different result after doing the same thing over and over again. He's not going to be fit for the rest of the season. I would bet money on it, you know? Um, so these rumors are not surprising to me. I do think that it's just so strange the way that this injury has come about as well. Like, I wonder if there's been a falling out there. I just have this like weird feeling, but whatever. Juventus, you need to come with some coin though. Like, a loan without an obligation to buy, I feel like is so going backwards. He has 2 years left on his deal, I think. He has like this season and then the next season. And so I could see Juventus trying to angle for some sort of like whittle it down to as little as possible and then try to get him basically on a free. But this is also why I think we should have been very open to selling him in the summer, despite everybody being so upset by me even suggesting it. Because this was so obviously going to happen. Declan Rice comes in, his influence grows, Thomas Partey gets injured, and then we're trying to figure out whether or not it's the right thing to do to keep him on, because nobody's going to renew his deal. And nobody's going to want a player that's a crock, So the more he gets injured, the less valuable he becomes in the market. And so the 20, 30 million that Saudi Arabia was willing to offer you actually starts looking very tantalizing right about now, because we could be looking at losing this guy for like 15 million. Because if the only teams that are willing to take him are like in Spain and Italy, he's not going to go for that much. So it's one of those situations where I do think that sometimes you have to know when to sell and when to cut ties. And as much as fans would have been like up in an uproar because Partey and Xhaka both left in the same window, we would have been in the same situation that we're in now. There's no real difference between him being there for the first 3 games of the season and not being there at all, because he's not going to play anyway until January or beyond January. So sometimes you have to know when to cut ties. I was very open to the idea of him leaving in the summer. Now we're in a situation where, that 30 million could have probably went a long way, so, or it could have went halfway to us getting like a Douglas Luiz or something like that. So yeah, it's a sucky situation right now. Again, it's not about his quality. I want to reiterate that again, because I know people are crying in the comments. It's not really about that. It's about Arsenal needs somebody that they can really rely upon right now, desperately. We need a balanced midfield, and we need somebody that's gonna make the midfield situation a lot less of a carry job for Declan Rice. That left center mid position is such a big gaping hole, and so I would really love for Arsenal to figure this out. Um, but there does feel like there's more to the story than just he's injured and now he wants to go in January. Those, it's like he was happy 1 minute and now it's like we want him gone. Like something else there, but whatever. Arsenal need to figure this out. BS Born Scampia. Oh, I can't read this. I'm so sorry. It's all in Italian. I'm sorry. Hugo says the swap for Vlahovic looks real tempting right now. Would you guys consider that? Would you guys consider like a partial swap for Vlahovic? Because I saw something this morning that said that Arsenal could get Vlahovic this January. And like beat Real Madrid to his signature. I don't think Real Madrid are really knocking on his damn door. Let's be freaking for real for 1 second. But it's the Sun says Arsenal are set to beat Real Madrid to the signing of Vlahovic as they plot a January transfer for the Juventus star. Arsenal could seal a move for Juventus striker Dusan Vlahovic in the January transfer window by beating Real Madrid in the race. It's not coming from like the best sources, but Arteta seems to love to to keep his interest in players that he was really interested in before. And so it could be something that you consider. But are you guys moved by Vlahovic at all? I mean, the thing about him is like he had a lot of hype the first time that we were linked with him when he was going from Fiorentina to Juventus. I think a lot of us were like, yeah, that guy he looks good, right? When he was at Fiorentina in 2021 or 2020, 2021, he scored 21 goals and got 3 assists. A lot of those were penalties, but it is what it is. And in 2021, 2022, he had 17 goals. That's a good return, for a striker. And this is about the time that we wanted him. Then now at Juventus, like 7 goals and 1 assist, 10 goals and 2 assists, 4 goals and 1 assist. I mean, it's not like the worst, but it's not the best. It's the Italian league, and you got the number 9 on your back, buddy. So what are you up there doing? Let's see. What is he doing for Serbia? He scored like 3 goals in World Cup qualifier, so he's doing good for his country, I guess. But are you guys moved by Dusan Vlahovic anymore? I mean, there's other options that are going to be available. And I'm not sure he would be top of my list. I wouldn't say 100% no, but I don't think I'm jumping for joy, if that makes sense. Nico says it's funny because if we get rid of Partey and get a mid, we don't strengthen our squad, and we know squads win you leagues. Well, you do strengthen your squad because you have a person that's not available and then a person that is available. So right now, Thomas Partey, like as much as people are counting him in the squad, right now he's not available in the team. So I do think you strengthen the squad just by the simple fact that like even if you bring in somebody that's 5% less good of a footballer than Thomas Partey, but that person is available from January into the rest of the season, and Thomas Partey is only there for 30%. You have strengthened your squad because Thomas Partey is not there. That's the whole point. It's not like Thomas Partey is just there and he's on our bench and he's not playing. He's not available. So of course you strengthen your squad in that respect. I think that makes more sense if he was available all the time, but he's not. He's rarely available. Justa J says Partey scammed Arsenal. He got injured just as the transfer window ended. Something stinks about all of this, but if he's desperate to leave, then go. Aman says, I can't see Partey leaving in January. Hakuza says, we need to keep Partey as long as possible, in my opinion, unless he wants to leave. I mean, what if he wants to leave, you guys? What if he wants to leave? There are reports that he wants to go. What if he wants to go? Would you sanction the move? I mean, why are we so desperate to hold on to somebody that's only been available for like 4 games this season? Is it the idea of Partey, or is it that you really believe he's going to be fit or not. Can anybody say with chest that they feel like he's going to play the second half of the season? Like, just take from January on to May. How many games do you actually think he's going to play? Say it with chest. Like, what do you actually think? Because I feel like some of this is like, I'm holding on to it because of the idea of him. But we've seen that when we've let players go, we tend to be okay, even if we freak out at the beginning. People thought that when we left Aubameyang or Aubameyang left in January, that was the end, and we actually got better from there. So sometimes I do feel like we're holding on to the idea of somebody and the hope and that he's going to be there. But the reality of the player is that he's probably not going to. And so whether he stays or not, to me, is irrelevant at this stage. I just think Arsenal need to make sure that they do not risk their season on the back of this guy's hamstrings, because he's not going to be fit, you know? Um, so yeah. Um, John P says, I agree with Jess. He's just never fit, but cannot say I am not gutted. We never got a season out of him and Rice. That's a Champions League winning quality midfield. I think that, on paper, that's a very, very good midfield, obviously. Like Declan Rice, he can play pretty much any position and he's going to make it his own. And then you have Thomas Partey. Like, actually rewatched the Community Shield again, just because I wanted to see that partnership again. And, because I was bored, it's international break and we won. And I did feel like even early stages, it looked pretty good, especially out of possession. It looked pretty good. And so it does have the potential to, I think what's most important about that combination is it provides a good enough platform for Odegaard to do his thing. Because Odegaard was actually pretty good in the Community Shield. He wasn't at his best, but he was much better than what we saw. And I do think that in big games, it's really difficult for Odegaard to impose himself when he doesn't have his best DMs behind him, right? Um, so it would, on paper, that midfield is very, very good, but the game is not played on paper. Right now, the most available midfield that we have is some combination of Odegaard, Havertz, Rice, and Jorginho. The three of those, And so regardless of how good it is on paper, Arsenal really need to figure out if they're willing to risk it on the back of the sky. Hellman says, just say it with chest. Do you really think that the board would splash to put 50 million on a player? I mean, I don't think that we'd be linked to anybody if we didn't have any money. That's what I'll say. I think at this stage, I don't think that two players that we don't need to be linked to. What's the point? Like, even if you say that it's the agent, that's Kia Jarapshin, that's pushing this Douglas Luiz thing, for what reason? He just signed a new deal. It's not like he's going to turn around and sign another one. So for me, it's unlikely, I think, that Arsenal don't have any money in January. I just think whether or not we have enough, 50 million for Arsenal right now is probably doable. Anything above that is probably out of our abilities. Michael says, even if I was moved by Vlahovic, getting a striker is nowhere near as important as another midfielder right wing depth. Kind of agree. Samuel says, I have a fear Partey might leave for free or for way less money because of his injury. Probably. Vinicius says, Jess Douglas starts for Arsenal right away. D Brown says, we got better. Didn't we bottle top four? We would have bottled it with or without him. Like, we did get better when Aubameyang left. Like, the mood got better. The football got better. We started to see the team move on. I don't think anybody at the end of the season, let's not revise history here. Let's keep it absolutely 100. At the end of the season, nobody was crying about Aubameyang. Once we got beyond January, it was like, this is who we have. And we did actually really well. Like, even though we didn't make what we wanted to make, that doesn't mean that we didn't get better without him. And so did you guys think that we got worse without Aubameyang? Like, I don't think we did. I think you're lying if you think you did. Coble says, I'd rather let him go and get someone else to build the team chemistry with, even if they aren't exactly what he is. And that, I think that for me, that leads me into the next conversation around the two players that were linked to to replace Thomas Partey in January, potentially. Because that's the whole reason why we're being linked to the likes of Douglas Luiz and Ruben Neves now is because of Thomas Partey's injury and probably his inevitable exit as well, whether it's in January or not. And so do these players fill the gap? Been watching a lot more of Douglas Luiz in the last couple of days to try to understand what type of player that he is. Saw him play a little bit for Brazil, watched some comps, watched an Aston Villa game to try to understand what kind of player he is. A number 6/number 8. And I think the biggest quality that he adds is his press resistance. I think that's the main thing. If you want to replace Thomas Partey in January, one of the things that you have to replace is his ability to receive the ball under pressure. None of our midfielders right now have that level of authority in midfield. As much as I love Declan Rice, I think that he receives the ball out wide a lot more because that's not really his thing, is receiving it with 3 or 4 players around him and being able to dip the shoulder and get away. That's a Thomas Partey thing. That's one of his biggest strengths. That's probably the thing that people like the most about him besides his passing. So that's what Douglas Luiz definitely gives you back. So if you want a player that, I think one of the things that Arsenal are struggling with right now is that teams feel comfortable flooding the midfield because they know that none of our midfielders will receive it under pressure. So that makes sure that we have to go down the wings. And when we go down the wings, it makes it easier for them to defend the box. Basically, they're limiting our access into central spaces. We've spoken about that quite often. And despite we're doing really well not being able to access those areas, but the best teams do tend to figure out ways to get there. And so if Arsenal can't do it by being direct into a striker, then they need to be able to do it by evading pressure through midfield. Thomas Partey, he had dropped the shoulder on so many people and made them look silly so many times that they just stopped pressing him altogether. We just got through those middle areas very easily. That's what Douglas Luiz, I think, gives you back. He gives you the press resistance back. Is his passing range like Thomas Partey? No. But I actually think that's the thing that you miss from Thomas Partey the most, is his press resistance. I think that passing wise, as long as you can have somebody that breaks the lines in some way, whether that's with their passing or dribbling, I think that's what you need. You need somebody that can receive the ball. And really, when we talked about what we need from a Xhaka replacement, we spoke about somebody that just does what Xhaka does, but does it better, like a more athletic version of Granit Xhaka. And one thing that he lacked, and is probably the only reason why he's not considered like an elite midfielder, is his ability to receive the ball under pressure. Now, he had a really good get out of jail free card that we know of, it's the turn around, fall on the ball, and get the foul. But somebody like Douglas Luiz and somebody like Thomas Partey is going to drop the shoulder and progress the ball in that way. He's a little bit lower to the ground, so he's a little bit of a better center of gravity. He does wiggle out of those pressurized situations quite well. He is a true midfielder, which is something that we miss. We don't really, beyond Declan Rice, have a player that is just a midfielder. Now he can play in a double pivot. He can play in the 8 role, but he's somebody that's going to give you that box to boxness, which I think we lack. So what he gives you from what we would lose from Partey, what he gives you back is the press resistance, but he also gives you the things that we wanted in a Xhaka replacement, which is just somebody like a midfielder that can do the box to box stuff, can get in the box and finish off moves, has a good passing range, and is a little bit more athletic, and it's Premier League standard. So I think that's why Arsenal are really interested in him. Also with the key adaptation thing, I think that makes it easier. That he's interested. I wonder what's this whole, he's the perfect midfielder for Arsenal. Where is that coming from? Because really, has he gotten better, or is he playing for a better side? I think that's my question. It's as Aston Villa have gotten better, has Douglas Luiz actually gotten better, or is it just showing his better traits? Is this a purple patch, or is this a player that's come into his prime now at 26 and he's really showing what he can do? That's my only concern around Douglas Luiz is he ever going to be world-class? Can he be world-class? I think that's where I'm at with him. Do I think he instantly makes us better? Yeah, I do. I think he instantly makes us better. He'd be available and he's press resistant, and he's a box-to-box midfielder of a Premier League standard. He 100% makes us better because we literally don't have that player in the squad right now. But does he lift the ceiling? Is it just a purple patch, y'all? You guys will let me know. Another thing that I like about Douglas Luiz that we don't have in the team is a dead ball specialist. I definitely think that that's something that we lack. Takes penalties, takes free kicks, does them very well. So, and he looked good for Brazil too. Like the other day when he came on, I thought he looked better than Bruno Guimaraes. I did. I think Bruno Guimaraes is having a poor season, but he looked better than Bruno Guimaraes. So you guys will let me know, but it's one of those things where, I think he gives you a little bit of two midfielders that we have lost over the last, 6 months, or not 6 months, 3 months, 4 months, and Xhaka and Partey. Is he going to replace either one of them in their entirety? No, but do we need that? I don't think so. I think people are like, well, we have to keep Partey because we're never going to find somebody just like him. I don't think we need anybody just like him. I actually think our midfield is changing. And I think the biggest indicator of that is Declan Rice. Arteta spent 105 million on a DM. He clearly wanted to change the chemistry in the midfield. But he does need to add some pieces back to make Arsenal a team that can access those central spaces. And I think that's going to come with more physicality, more athleticism, and press resistance. Those are things that Douglas Luiz has. Do we need the passing range? I don't necessarily think so. But you guys will let me know. MM says Luiz for 30 million, sure, but not for 60 because now you're entering De Jong and Barella money. Potentially, but do you guys actually think that is not spending 60 million on Douglas Luiz, does that make sense just because you could get somebody for better in an ideal world? I don't actually think we have a chance of getting Barella or De Jong. I think both of them are very happy where they are right now. And if they were to leave the clubs that they're at right now, they'd probably go, if they didn't come to the Premier League, they're probably going to go to Man City, on period. Maybe Liverpool. So I don't know if I believe in not spending 50, 60 million on Douglas Luiz because we could potentially, in an ideal world in my fantasies, bring in players that we probably have no chance of bringing in, for multiple reasons, right? Is 60 million a premium? Yes. But, think about the prices or the fees that certain players have went for, somebody like James Ward-Prowse, I think went to West Ham for 30 million, and he's like a basic standard midfielder. So when we start to go to the next level up, isn't 50, 60 million just about what somebody like Douglas Luiz would cost? When we talk about Declan Rice at 100 million and James Ward-Prowse at 30, isn't a player that's probably right smack dab in the middle, prime age, Premier League standard player, probably going to cost you 50, 60 million? Is that actually a crazy fee? Or is it just where the market kind of is right now? John P says, Luiz is a really good player. I really like him, but I see it as a summer signing. Neves on loan in January seems like a good January opportunity. We'll talk about that. Hugo says, Jess, what position does Gabriel Mascardo play? He's a DM. C. Wilder says, if that's weird to you, I'm cool with that. Oh yeah, you guys talking to each other. Benicia says, Partey is not better than Luiz, but you guys are not ready for that. D'Angelo says, D'Angelo says Villa overprice less than 60 million for Douglas Luiz. Is it though? Nico says Luiz is going to cost at least 60 million. You guys though, think about the market though. It's what the market price is, and also what he is worth to Villa. Think about that. If Declan Rice costs 100 million, Caicedo costs 100 million, Enzo costs 100 million, Conor Gallagher were to leave Chelsea, he was going to go to any club for about 45 million. Conor Gallagher in this market costs 45 million. And James Ward-Prowse is about 30 million. These are all players that are CMDMs, right? So if that's the case, and you guys think Douglas Luiz is a good player, Premier League standard, decent end product, prime age, playing in a European side, why would he cost less than 50, 60 million? I'm trying to understand how we're pricing players out. Do you guys think that, because if you think he's worth about 30 million, You don't think that he's better than James Ward-Prowse? I think he's clear of James Ward-Prowse. I think he's much better than James Ward-Prowse. I think he offers you a lot more. Do I think he's Caicedo levels in terms of like their projected talent? No. So I don't think he should be anywhere near, 100 million. But 50, 60, that feels about like the right price in this market, considering Conor Gallagher would go about 45 million. Demore says Lavia costs about 50 million. Leo says Luiz will not cost less than 60 million, especially in January. D'Angelo says Ward-Prowse is good and he's 45 million. The both have different abilities. They have different abilities, but I mean, think about the abilities that they have. We talk about James Ward-Prowse being like elite dead ball specialist. Douglas Luiz is very good at that as well. But oh, by the way, he gives you the press resistance. He's also scoring quite a bit of goals. So they have different abilities, but I think my point remains the same. If James Ward-Prowse went for about 30 million and Conor Gallagher goes for like 45 million, how do we actually think that Douglas Luiz is worth like 30 million? That's just what we think he's worth. Maybe like a couple of seasons ago when we were first going after him, yeah, he was probably worth about 30, 40. But think about what's happened in the market since then. 3 midfielders in the Premier League have went for 100 million. The market is different, y'all. It's different now. So I think that they're well within their right to ask for about 50 to 60 million. And Arsenal at this stage, any player that they want that's about that level is going to cost them about that much, you know? DS Electronics Unlimited says, just why would Neves leave his club in January? Isn't he starter at his club? We'll talk about that in a second. says Luiz is on the level of a Locatelli or a Ruiz from PSG 30 million pound footballers. Those players are playing in Europe, though. They're not playing in England. So again, England market is different than the European market. So again, even if you say that he's worth about 30 million, he's worth about 30 million in Europe, but he's probably worth about 50 to 60 million in England. We have to remember that the Premier League is dealing with different cash, what's that boy's name? Sandro Tonali. Didn't he go for like 60 million to Newcastle? Again, like, let's be real. Like 50, 60 million is probably about what this guy is worth. C. Wilder says, literally just pointing out Patino has some rare traits emerging. Chill out. You guys are talking to each other. Dr. Gen says, for 40 million, they rather keep Luiz. They are not broke. I mean, 40 million is what gets you Cole Palmer. And he had 14 appearances in the Premier League? Again, you guys, we have to remember that the market is much different than it was even just 2 years ago. Just because we wanted to offer 30 million for him 2 years ago, the market has completely changed now. 50, 60 million is like 30 million like a couple seasons ago. So yeah. DS Electronics says Tonali went for 50 million or 70 million. And Tonali was whatever, to me. Here to there says, before we worry about signings, we need Arteta to commit to stop starting Havertz and Nketiah, then we can assess. No, I think we can assess now. I think we're definitely at that stage now. Karthik says, we should try to sign Decore from Crystal Palace. He is solid. Is that what we need? Do we need we have a true DM in our team right now in Declan Rice. Do we actually want to commit to moving Declan Rice to the 8 position, or do we want him to play in the best position for him, which is the 6 position, and bring in somebody that naturally plays a box-to-box role? Because Decore is literally just like a much lesser version of Declan Rice. So I wouldn't want him, because I don't want somebody that can't pass the ball, can't progress the ball, doesn't get assists, doesn't get goals. That's what we need, right? That's what we expected from that left center mid position. We expected Xhaka, but better. That's what we expected. Even if the attributes are a little bit different, that's what we kind of expected. That level, a little bit better. Somebody that was going to be box-to-box goals and assists, but not leave our DM hanging, right? And so I don't know if I want Decore from Declan Rice or from Crystal Palace, because he's just a way lesser version of Declan. So why would we want him? Hugo says Mariba from RB Leipzig is interesting to me. Nico is saying Diomande. So we're going to talk about him as well. There's 150 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. I want to talk about Ruben Neves as well, because he has been said to be Arsenal's #1 target, which actually would make more sense than Douglas Luiz, because let's be real, Aston Villa have no reason to sell whatsoever. I mean, they're in a really good position. Excuse me, they're about 2 points off top 4. or something like that, playing good football, good home record. Why would they sell one of their better players? They can wait until the summer to do something like that if that's something that they're interested in doing at all, right? Um, but then you have Ruben Neves, whose availability has become, a topic of discussion because Newcastle have decided that they want to bring him in on a loan, because that's the scheme that they're running, which is, hey, we're both like we're owned by Saudi Arabia, so we're going to allow a Saudi Arabian team to buy a player that we really want. And then so the money is not on our books and it doesn't go towards our FFP limit. We're going to loan him back so that we can kind of like shift the money around a little bit. It's almost like having like another reserve account available to you, right? And the Premier League teams want to stop that from happening. They need 14 out of the 20 teams to vote on it, and I'm pretty sure that they will vote for it not to happen. Now, that doesn't mean that Newcastle won't in the summer try to bring him in, but if he had his options all available to him and he, asked himself, does he want to go to Newcastle or does he want to go to Arsenal? I don't know. Maybe I'm pretty sure he'd probably choose Arsenal. I don't know. Maybe I'm assuming here, but Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta has asked the club to sign Ruben Neves from Al Hilal in the January transfer window that's coming from Sport. Mikel Arteta has personally asked. That's what it says. And there was something here from Z as well that Arsenal have firm intention to sign Ruben Neves in the January window. Arteta has insisted on signing to the Arsenal board. The Gunners hope to strengthen their midfield after an injury to Partey, who may end up leaving in January. Neves is the number one priority. Arsenal wanted to sign the Portuguese international in the summer window, considering, however, Arsenal could not compete with Al Hilal financially as the fee was considered too high for a player who had 1 year left on his Wolves contract. So, long-standing interest in this player. We all know that. We've been linked to this guy for a while, and if you guys haven't been here, welcome to the Ruben Neves hating show. I've never liked this guy. I've never rated him. I was like, if you want him, just keep Shaka. But beggars can't be choosers, and I'm desperate. So I would definitely take this guy in knowing that it's a loan and that Thomas Partey is not available. I think that that's important, and, a loan means that we don't have to commit to it. Sorry, you guys, I'm trying to change my light real quick because I don't like it. Yeah, that's better. So we don't have to commit to it if he bombs. But the good thing about Ruben Neves is that he's Premier League proven. So we know that he doesn't need any adaptation. He's 26. He was a leader at Wolves. Another player that's very good on dead balls as well. What he has that Douglas Luiz doesn't have is passing. Like, the guy's catalog of passes is beautiful. I watched a comp of him at his time at Wolves, and I thought, this is a very, very good passer of the ball. Like, when we talk about like top level passers, like, he's one of them. He has a very good range of passing that's more similar to what you would expect from like Thomas Partey and Jorginho. What he doesn't have is the press resistance. So if he doesn't have a lot of space, I don't know how he's going to wiggle out of that pressure. He's not as, stuck in the ground as Jorginho is when he's under pressure, but he's definitely not somebody that's going to drop the shoulder. So what you have is a difference between like Douglas Luiz, who gives you that drop of the shoulder from Thomas Partey, and then you have Ruben Neves that gives you the passing range of a Jorginho or Thomas Partey without the press resistance. And so what do you need more in January? Well, what you need the most in January is a damn body. That's what you need. You need a damn body that can come straight in and fill that role. But, this is a player that I do think helps you get through the season, but I wouldn't necessarily want to commit to him long term. And so, Ruben Neves is an interesting option and probably our most likely option, especially with the agent that he has. Like, both players are probably attractive to us because Edu has a strong relationship with both of their agents, right? But Ruben Neves is probably the most available. So it's a really interesting one. I think Arsenal literally need someone. Yeah, I think he literally We literally need someone. Also, I forgot what I was going to say. It went out of my mind. Anyways, let's go to comments. Blaze says, people forget we almost signed Ruben Neves before when he played for Wolves, but it didn't happen exactly. Eric Flores says, we could use another central midfielder, but big booty, big butt, big booty. We could use a striker and we create a lot of crosses for a player like Toney. Here to there says, spot on, Jess. If Neves coming means we don't have to start Havertz, please bring. I feel like that's where I'm at with it. Like, I just think that if you just get another midfielder in there of a Premier League standard, you will see our levels go up massively. And I don't think Jorginho's doing an awful job. I just think that his age and his lack of athleticism really stifles us quite a bit in certain matches, but I don't think Ruben Neves would stunt us that badly. I just think that we still would have a similar issue of not being able to beat the press without it being about passing. Now, his passing range, his ability to pass through the lines probably gives you a little bit more, but it's about, can he get on the ball and turn and beat the press? No. Douglas Luiz can do that. But does he make us better? Yeah, because you a body makes you better. A midfielder makes you better. MM says Neves, another midfielder, not Andre at 35 million is the way to go, or Mascardo. I wouldn't want to really wouldn't really want to bring in an 18-year-old to solve our January issues. I like Mascardo like as an idea, but we're talking about somebody that we're going to bring in January to help us win a major trophy. An 18-year-old is not going to do that for us. I like Andre. I'm interested to see how he plays for Argentina for Brazil against Argentina, because I thought he looked like one of the better players against Colombia. Now, I was really like sifting through the trash there because everybody was really poor except for Martinelli. So I'm interested to see what he looks like again. Now, he's coming from an inferior league, the Brazilian league. So I think physicality wise, things like that, he would be able to adapt. But, I still think that there would be a little bit of adaptation there for Andre. But for 35 million, that makes it worth it, right? So yeah, I like that option as well. Winning Way says, when the big games come on, you will see how average Douglas Luiz is. Yeah, I guess I maybe want to rewatch some of the games who have Aston Villa played against already. I know they played against Liverpool. Have they played against any other top teams so far? Maybe I need to rewatch one of those types of games and see. I don't know, is the drop off that bad? Or are we just overdoing it? Dr. Ken says, I rate Neves. His decision to leave Europe was crazy. Wolves were very bad, so I'm not surprised he looked underwhelming at times. I feel like they had probably already told him, Newcastle, that they were going to come back to get him. So he's probably like, I'm just going to buy my time, hang out in Saudi Arabia, get paid quite a bit, and then go back to the Premier League. I think that was always the plan. The problem is that I'm pretty sure that they didn't think that the Premier League clubs would vote on this ban. Now, if he has his heart set on going to Newcastle, which who would, but if you have your heart set on Newcastle, then Arsenal don't have a chance. But I feel like we probably do have a chance because we're Arsenal, so why wouldn't he want to come to us? So yeah. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Maxwell says Neves has a celebration issue. What does that mean? What does that mean, y'all? What does that mean? What's a celebration issue? Is that something I'm not getting? DS Electronics Unlimited says Luis is not on our level, Jess. He will buckle under the pressure. That's another thing too. It's like coming up to Arsenal's, he would be coming straight into a team that's like needs to win the Premier League or the Champions League or is expected to win some level of silverware, where he'd be going to a team in Villa where they could effing bomb this season and nobody would care. Like literally no one would care if they were crap this season. Like their expectations are like basically nothing. It's just have fun and get to the European spots, try to push. But if you fall, like it's fine. He'd be coming straight into the fire. And we've seen some players come to Arsenal. They don't really deal with the pressure as well as they probably should. So that is something I think to consider, is like a Ruben Neves or a Douglas Luiz, who both have not played for top four sides. Would they be able to deal with moving mid-season and the lights being like hella bright. Because basically, what Arsenal fans are looking for is a freaking hero. So whoever comes in, they're going to expect that player to change our lives, and that's unfortunate because after spending 200 million in the transfer window, we should not be looking for a player to save us. But that's the situation that we're in based on the choices that we've made. And so the player that comes in is going to have a lot of eyes on them watching Raya struggle the way that he has so far. I think when the lights were just a little too bright is something to consider when you look at a Douglas Luiz or Ruben Neves. They neither of them have played at the highest level, right? Blaze says, Jess, you forgot Neves didn't like when our players celebrated a win against Wolves. Yes. Yes, I do remember. Well, F him. Who cares? I mean, it wouldn't stop me from wanting the player. You're just bitter, At that time, all those teams that were coming up, you know, that were kind of touching the edges of European football, thought that they were better than us, and felt like they could just do whatever and say whatever, and we would just, I think it was a tough transition realizing that Arsenal are good again. I think about some of the issues that we have with like Villa over the years and West Ham over the years, so he was probably just a little bitter. They probably before the game thought it was going to be like easy, and Arsenal were just going to go in there and like be whack as hell, and they were in for a rude awakening, so F him, don't care. you know P Trim says big things expected. P Trim says can't have another Kai. Dr. Ken says, why are people obsessed with the celebration incident? Won't stop him from signing for Arsenal. I don't think that they're obsessed. I think they're just bringing it up because, you have like these little spats with players here and there. I mean, I think it's like the Declan Rice and Kedia thing where, they obviously like Declan Rice is like, who are you, bruv? Who are you, bruv? Like literally you hung out with him as like a child and like his mother cooked for you. Like, are you for real? And now they're two of the closest in the team. So I think it's just a funny thing. Even like Toney, like Mafia Boss, like Toney had to dig at us and still wants Arsenal again. Like some people, it's just bitter because they're not at Arsenal. It's just bitterness. So I accept it. I don't really care. It wouldn't stop. Like, there's only certain things that would stop me from like wanting a player to come, and that's like a public like, oh, F them, they suck. I would never want to go to them. Yeah, that's not a player that I would want. See, Walter says I want some of what name Smith had. You guys are talking about whatever y'all are talking about. Winning Way says I can't believe people would turn down Modric for 6 months. Modric's game was never based on speed or strength. Give him the ball, and we were controlling games a lot more. I'm turning it down. I don't really want Modric. Love him. But throwing him in the throes of the Premier League, down. I don't know. He's barely surviving in La Liga right now. I think we should just allow the man to go to Saudi Arabia where he probably belongs right now. But I get what you're saying, like the level of the player, because he's such a quality player, like take him for 6 months. But if that's the case, let Santi come back and lace his boots up, F it. DS says, we really need a striker, though. Ivan would be great. I think we need a striker less than we need a midfielder, to be honest. We've spoken about this so many times that, like, if we're not creating chances, doesn't matter if Toney's there or not, and right now we're not creating enough chances. I think if you get Trossard, Jesus, Martinelli, and Saka enough chances, they'll score, a lot of goals. Between Jesus, Saka, and Martinelli last season, they scored 40 goals. So, and we share the goals as it is. Martin Odegaard scored 15 goals. So I don't necessarily feel like, I think we need a striker. I'm not saying that we don't need one. When we talk about priorities in January, when you look at not having one of your best midfielders available to you, and then you have the Havertz situation and Emile Smith-Rowe is not there and nobody trusts Fabio Vieira, I think midfield is actually more important. So despite needing a striker's not going to do anything if there's no chances being created. Aha says, Jess, would you prefer Neves on loan and one more player in another position in Jan, or let's say just Douglas Luiz as a midfield signing? Depends on what position that player plays. I feel like I would be happy with just a midfielder if it's the right midfielder. I think because I actually rate our attackers, I think, a lot more than other people do. I think, yeah, they're not as clinical as they could be. But I think if you just stop playing Nketiah as much and play Trossard, a lot of your problems would be solved. And if you create quite a bit more chances, like the one thing about Arsenal that surprised me is that our lack of cutbacks this season. I think we have quite a few players that arrive in the box, like Odegaard, even Kai Havertz gets into that position. That's how he scored the goal against Turkey yesterday. We just don't get into those positions and cut the ball back into those easy, those easier goals that we were scoring last season. Everything is so hard now. And so for me personally, like just one midfielder, I think solves so many of our issues. Just like if Thomas Partey were fit, I think he solves so many of our problems. You know, so I would even if it's just a midfielder, I'm fine with that. But if I had to bring in another player, it'd be an attacker. Um, Maybe a striker. So, I guess Neves, so we can get more than one player, but again, I'd be so okay with just a midfielder, to be honest, and I wouldn't want to do too much in January because you're stuck with these players, and when you're desperate, you kind of put yourself in a position where you can't act on things that are probably things that you would want to in the summer. And I'm sure Arsenal have big plans for the summer, and I would hate for some of those to fall by the wayside because we're desperate in January, right? Um, See, Walter says an injury to Declan, however unlikely, lands us right in shit. Yeah, I agree. Leo says the most lacking position is the right wing. Most lacking position right now is midfield. I think people are heavily focused on right wing because they're super afraid that Saka is not going to be available. But Saka is going to play 90% of our games this season. And if he doesn't, we'll just play somebody else there. We'll play Jesus there and play Trossard through the middle. I think Arsenal is very comfortable doing that. And so I think our biggest problem is midfield, guys. I think as much as I think people just want an attacker because attackers are more fun. But really, we need a midfielder for real. Okay. Let's see what you guys are saying. MM says desperation can ruin squad building plans. I agree. Like one player should be enough. I think we need to choose the player that's going to give us the maximum bang for our buck, the most is going to tick most of the boxes. Right now, Arsenal's biggest problem is creating through the middle, accessing central spaces, and creating chances. That comes from midfield. A heavy reliance on Zinchenko, too much Jorginho, a heavy reliance on a player that if he were to break down, we'd be in deep shit, like you guys said, Declan Rice. And we need a player that's going to help unlock our best creator. Those are, to me, the things that stand out to us the most, and a midfielder ticks most of those boxes. So yeah. D'Angelo says the biggest problem is the midfield. Yes. Winning Way says, what happened to that Jonathan David guy? Is he still good? I think people realize that he's pretty average. Nico says, I would rather get a CB and mid and Jan than anything else. So let's talk about a defender that Arsenal have been linked to. We've been linked to quite a bit, but I just want to talk about the bigger name because the other ones are quite obscure and I didn't feel like looking them up. Diomande from Sporting, we've been linked to him quite a bit over the last year or so. Arsenal have been said to be putting in the groundwork for a signing or for a transfer. And even if it doesn't get done in January, which is unlikely, possibly in the summer. So according to reports in Portugal, Arsenal have started to put in the groundwork to sign Ousmane Dembele. Oh my God, I have international football on the brain. Ousmane Diomande. A deal in January is unlikely. However, the 19-year-old defender does have a release clause of 70 million in his current contract, which is a lot. But can I just say that this is also the reason why I just feel like we need to be so thankful for Saliba, because again, remember when we were talking about how much would it cost to replace Saliba? that's how much it would cost you. And that's from like an obscure league, right? Portugal. If you wanted to get him from any of the top 5 leagues, baby, you'd be paying over 100 million for this player. And Diomande, when I watch him play, I think he's basically like Sporting's version of Saliba. And when we speak about like the composition of our back line, what we do lack back there is another center back. Without Saliba back there, it just all falls apart, I think. Because there's nobody that can really do the things that he does from that central spot. I remember in the summer when we were playing, I think it was like Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, and Tommy, and Timber was inverting from the right, and so Saliba was more on the right-hand side doing the Gabriel job, but on the other side, and Gabriel was in the middle. Y'all, I was like, we need a center back because nobody else can do it the way that Saliba does it. If Saliba gets injured, we can survive with the players that we have, but the way that we build from the back with a really good ball playing center back that's calm, cool and collected, athletic, and do the 1v1 defending, we don't have another defender like that. You know, as much as I love Ben White and Gabriel, they don't have it like that, right? And so Diomande is basically the Sporting version of that. And I think my main reason for wanting this player, whether it be in January, or I'd prefer it not to be in January, but whether it be in the next window or the window after that, is I don't want Newcastle to get him, because Newcastle are also interested in him. I think a back line with Livermento, Trippier, whatever, Lewis Hall, whoever on those sides, and Sven Botman and Diomande is right up there with some of the best defenses in the league. And so it would hurt Newcastle, but also help us build our depth at the back. And I know people are like, we don't need another defender. This is something that I feel like we need, because I don't actually believe Kivior is going to become a center back for us. I think he's basically going to end up being a Ben White on the other side. When Arteta trusts him more, Gabriel is what he is. Ben White is a right back. You know, Timber is not going to play center back for us. We know he's going to be another one of those full back options. So, you know, this is another player with the athleticism and the speed and the quality on that final line. Like Gabriel and Saliba, we probably need that player, right? And that's him. So just pulling this up for a second, like I know you guys are like, oh my God, a chart. I don't want to watch a chart. I want to see a chart. But this is the under 23s center backs in 2023 playing in the non-top 5 European leagues. And these are defensive contributions on the left and contributions in possession. Diomande, look at Timber. You guys, look at Timber. He's elite. But look at Diomande. He's at the very top there next to Gonzalo Inacio, which is his teammate. Look where he is. Like, he's a very, very good center back, and anybody who gets him is getting a Saliba, Ivorian Saliba. That's what you're getting. This is also kind of showing him like against like, just if you guys like this type of chart a little bit better, look at the possession. The possession is yellow. So when we're successful take-ons, progressive carries, sorry, people are messaging me. I know you guys can hear that. Successful take-ons, progressive carries, progressive passes, pass completion, passes attempted. That's like Saliba levels right there. We're talking about somebody that at the halfway line is dictating play like Saliba. Shot creating actions for a center back, that's crazy. And you'll look at like clearances and blocks and are like, oh my God, why is his clearances and blocks not that high? Neither is Saliba's, because he doesn't defend as much, right? But his tackling percentage is actually very good. So yeah, like a elite player, like he's very, very good at 19 years old. Again, he's like a Saliba, Ivorian Saliba, you know, playing in Portugal right now. We saw him play against us. He was really good when we got knocked out of the Europa League. So as much as I don't think people are interested in a defender right now, I do think this is a player that you just have to kind of be greedy sometimes and say, you know what, we need a player like this to backfill the positions that we have. Hopefully I'm pretty sure we'll still have Champions League, so we get to play Champions League, and it stops Newcastle from progressing, because these players don't come very often. They don't. We know Saliba is like one of a kind, this is like the next Saliba coming down the line. And if we can stop any of our rivals getting that player, it stops them from progressing. They have to look at other players. So this is the one. If we're going to get a center back, this is the one. Not necessarily in January, but a player that we need to be looking at to tie up in the summer. Because I just think it's not like sometimes you just need to be greedy. Sometimes you just need to be greedy. Matt G says, how do we get Timber for 40 million? Masterclass. I cannot wait for the guy to get back. C. Wilder says, these. MM says, Mikel, if you want to play total control, this is the guy. He can also play DM. Winning Way says, I think Ramsdale, Smith Rowe, Partey, Cedric will be sold in January. At least 2 of those, I think, will go. At least 1. I'll say at least 1, just to be safe. But somebody's going to go. D'Angelo says, Leo, from my view, the center forward do more work than the right winger. John P says, if the worst thing ever happens and Real Madrid put 150 on the table for Saliba in a year or 2, Diomande will make it a lot easier to deal with. I like the way you're thinking. That's an inevitability coming down the pipeline, is that one of the legacy clubs are going to put a big bid down for Saliba and potentially turn his head. I'm prepared for it. So if you already have this player here with you, sometimes you have to be greedy. We've seen it with other teams, Chelsea, Man City, they're just greedy. Sometimes you have to be that way because it helps you in the long run, just in case your player leaves, but it also keeps your rivals from progressing and buying, because these types of players, again, like strikers and defenders like this, they don't come down the pipeline very often. And so I do think that it makes it easier just in case we do lose Saliba. But if we lose Saliba to injury, it makes it easier. If you have Diomande plus Gabriel, that's not as big of a drop-off as it's going to be to play 2 left-footed center backs in Kivior and Gabriel and lose our ability to play, the way that we want to. Saliba does a lot for us in there. I really think people it's not just the last-ditch tackles that he does back there, you guys. He's literally orchestrating things from midfield. He's one of our highest touch, when we look at our touch maps and stuff like that, Saliba's always high up at the top. That player needs to be so comfortable on the ball in the way that we play. And I don't think there's anybody in our team currently that can do what Saliba does at that level. And so, yeah, you're going to have to deal with injuries and players not being able to play. But if Arsenal can be a little greedy right now and, just take him off the table for other teams, I love it. I would love that. That would make me feel like Arsenal are going into their villain arc. I want that. I want that for us. Cameron said I would transform Diomande into a defensive midfielder. He's so good on the ball, and his passes are also class. C. Wilder says it's so hard to read Saliba's long-term commitment. It is, but I don't expect his commitment to be like a Hale Ender. I'm very realistic when it comes to our players, and I think to myself, very simply, if we're not winning major trophies, our better players will leave. Whether they're Hale End or not, you'll have more time with your Hale Enders, right? Or players that have been at the club longer. But somebody like Saliba doesn't really have any sort of loyalty to Arsenal. His loyalty is to himself. So unless Arsenal are winning the biggest trophies, there is kind of this inevitability that at some point Saliba will probably leave Arsenal. And so I'm not worrying about it so much right now because I don't think it's this season, next season. But beyond that, when he turns 24, 25, who knows? Aman says Arteta really likes signing defenders. We need a more attacking midfield quality. I don't think that means that getting a defender means that we're not going to get those. But I do think in past seasons, looking at the way that our team has broken down, with Saliba's injury, with Partey's injury, with, injuries to Tomiyasu, we've seen that the way that we play, if we don't have the ability to build from the back and dictate play the way that our defenders and our DMs do, everything just kind of falls by the wayside. So even if you have great attackers in your team, it doesn't really matter as much. I think that's the reason why Pep always has a good stock of very good defenders, right? And midfielders, is because that's how you build play. You could throw an Eddie Nketiah up there and pretty much win games. Look how we're winning games with Eddie, but if you have Rob Holding back there, your season's finished. Our season didn't finish with Eddie Nketiah up top. It finished when Rob Holding got at the back, right? And so I understand why people want more midfielders and attackers because they feel like that's just gonna solve everything. But if we don't have Saliba, there's like 3 players in our team that we don't have somebody that can do something similar to what they do, we're cooked. And I think Saliba is one of those. I think Odegaard is one of those, and I think Declan Rice is that player as well. So we need players that can allow us to do those things. If we can't get a replica of them, we have to find other ways to work around it. But because you're not going to buy another Declan Rice, right? But there's another Saliba out there in Portugal right now. And if you get him, you're setting yourself up for life. You're good. Let's see. Here to there says spot on, Jess. We have a 2-year window to win our best. We'll probably start leaving. To me, I'm very you know, relaxed about it because that's football. It'll hurt, but Arsenal have to start winning things. We can't just expect people to have their undying loyalty to us without actually they're loyal to themselves. It's not like a football team won't just have you sign a new deal and turn around and buy a new player and sit you down. It's like, look at Ramsdale. So players have to look out for themselves. I'm not naive enough to think that you know, these players are not going to look out for themselves, right? Henrik says, Jess, if you could have any of these players mentioned in the topic, what is your pick? Only one. If I had to choose just one between Ruben Neves, Douglas Luiz, and Diomande, I would probably choose Douglas Luiz. I just feel like that midfielder is so missing. And watching Douglas Luiz and watching Ruben Neves, I like the style of Douglas Luiz more than Ruben Neves. Ruben Neves reminds me of a more athletic version of Jorginho, and I prefer somebody that can play in the 8 role. So Declan Rice can play the position that he was meant to play. That's who I would choose. Winning Ways says, if Rice gets injured, it's all over for us. We need serious backup. Henrik says Declan Rice is one of a kind. He could play in the Invincibles first 11. He's that good. I said that he's going to be the replacement for Vieira that we've always wanted, not necessarily stylistically, but mentality and the ability to carry a team through difficult periods, leadership, presence, that type of stuff. He's definitely going to be that player for us. Elliot Roberts says Douglas Luiz is the left 8 we are missing right now. For me, I could still name 5 or 6 players that I would prefer over Douglas Luiz, but for the people that we've listed today, that's the player that I would choose if that's all I had to choose from, for sure. Winning Way says Paulinho was going to Bayern, or Paulinho this summer, just gone. Paulinho over Douglas Luiz any day, but Paulinho does exactly what Declan Rice does, but at a lower level. That's the thing, is people I think are choosing based on the stature and the hype around players. Paulinho is a quality player that does something very specific that we already have in our team. We already have an elite ball winner in our team. So why would we need another one? And I know that people are comfortable with moving Declan Rice into an 8 role, but why not allow Declan Rice to play the position that he said that he plays best and what we bought him for, and buy the position that we needed to fill anyway, which is the Xhaka position. That's what we needed to fill. Declan Rice does not have enough creativity and press resistance and that kind of stuff to play in that position. He even said it himself. He can make any position his own. I'm sure if you put him in the goal, he would save a goal. I'm sure if you put him in a striker position, he would make that happen. But I think the way that Arsenal's midfield is set up right now, if you just buy somebody that can play in that position that Xhaka left, I think you solve a lot of your problems. But I think if you start saying that you want to bring in Paulinho, who's a good ball-winning defensive midfielder, who Bayern went after they could not get Declan Rice. So you're just buying a Declan Rice clone that does what Declan Rice does at a lower level. Why would we do that? I don't see why would we bring up Paulinho. I don't know why we do it. Trini says, if we don't get anyone in January, where do you think Arsenal will finish? If we do, best case scenario, we'll finish. I think if we don't get anybody, we'll finish between 2nd and 4th. I think we have more than enough to finish in the top 4. I think we're one of the best teams in the league, if not the best right now. There's some teams that do some things better than us, but I think right now, we are, considering who we've played, who we've been missing, we are definitely a Champions League level team. I don't see us dropping out of the top 4, right? But in terms of being able to, like, when the other teams ramp up, when they get some of their players back, will Arsenal be able to maintain this the entire season? I'm not sure. And so I think we'll finish in the top 4 positions, but we won't win any of the trophies that we want to win without bringing in somebody. We have to bring somebody in January. We just have to. The caveat for me was Thomas Partey being fit. If he's not able to maintain his fitness, which he showed he cannot, you got to make it shake. You got to make it shake, Henrik says, Jess, that's spot on. We have been missing Vieira since he left, someone who can win the ball and also go forward. I was so happy when we got him. I still think, like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe he plays for us. Watching him play for England, I'm like, that's our player. Like, it's actually surreal because he is a Manchester United player of old, like the type of player that Sir Alex Ferguson would have bought, and would have been like a pillar of their team for a decade. And so Arsenal getting this type of player, because remember, this is not a player that we would have ever bought. We loved like a technical midfielder, somebody that didn't necessarily have the physicality of the ball winning ability, but could look really good on the ball. We would never have bought this type of player. In fact, I don't think Arsene Wenger ever bought a player like this. He always went for the smaller, more technical player. He always went for that like he converted Arteta into a 6. Like, that was his vibe, right? And so for us to have Declan Rice in our team, I just feel like it's so surreal because it's just the type of player that we've watched over the years go to Chelsea and go to Man United and win major honors. But now he's in our team, and it's just crazy to me. I love it. Nostradamus says Smith Rowe will be our number 8. Trust the process. In terms of Smith Rowe, I do think that out of everybody that played that number 8 position this season so far, outside of like Declan Rice and Odegaard, I actually think he looked the most capable in it against Sheffield and against Brentford. I thought Emile Smith Rowe looked pretty good. I thought Vieira looked okay in certain circumstances, but rewatching the Sheffield game again, which I did, and I think Smith Rowe, if he can maintain his fitness, probably just edges the other players in that position because he just knows how to create chances. He knows how to receive the ball under pressure. He has a little bit more about him. He's a little bit bigger. And so with Vieira as well, I did see that Marseille are interested in him on a loan. And teams are also interested in Kivior. I think if Arsenal allow Vieira to go in January, that's it. That's it. I do. I think that they don't believe in him. And actually, I'm starting to believe that they don't believe in him. I think it's a huge red flag that he did not start against Sheffield, or not against Sheffield, against Burnley. I do. I think that he was just breaking in, and then something happened against Spurs. I don't know if he actually got injured or not. Then he doesn't make the squad against Chelsea, and then he's like kind of getting these big part minutes. And when he comes in, he's not making enough of an impact. Not a great cameo against Newcastle, not a great cameo against Burnley. And so if the manager decides to allow him to go in January to like a Marseille or something like that, I do think that's pretty much the end. I think that Fabio Vieira is a very talented player. You guys know that I'll always backed him. But, at a certain point, like when you get the chances, you have to take them. You have to. And I think sometimes he does and sometimes he doesn't. And so if you don't look at Reece Nelson, almost every single time he comes onto the pitch, he makes an impact, and Arteta still doesn't trust him. So I know damn well he doesn't trust Fabio Vieira, And so if he were to go on a loan, I think that's it. I think he'll just kind of be loaned out until he eventually goes. And that would be really sad because I do think that he's a real quality player. But sometimes, if you don't step up to the occasion overawes you, and then that's just it. And at Arsenal, you only get a certain amount of chances, which would be unfortunate, but hasn't happened. I don't think Arsenal will do it because we don't have enough players anyway. We don't know about what's going to happen with Smith Rowe. And so I think Vieira will stay, but he needs to take the chances that he gets a lot more. They're going to come few and far between. And when he starts games, he needs to take a hold of them. And I think most of our eights, except for Smith Rowe, allow the games to pass them by. I think Vieira, more times than not this season, has allowed games to pass them by, just like Kai Havertz. Like, you just can't really remember anything that they've done. But I can name like 3 or 4 or 5 things that I've seen Emile Smith Rowe do in the limited time that he's had to make an impact in that position. So I agree with you that I think Smith Rowe has he could, if he maintained his fitness, could do it, but I just, again, I don't know if Arteta trusts him either, so he's probably the most likely to break through. He looked the most likely to break through. You guys will let me know what you think. So yeah, Leo says Vieira needs to get a run of games like Havertz. It would be nice to see Vieira and Emile Smith Rowe get the same level of minutes that Kai Havertz has gotten uninterrupted. Rain or shine, Kai Havertz has been able to play 4, 5, 6 games in a row without being taken off, without really making that much of an impact from what we can see. But Vieira, has a bad half or, whatever. Even sometimes he's played well, gets dropped the next game. Emile Smith Rowe, I don't think, had the opportunity. I actually think he would have continued to play had he had maintained his fitness. So it would be nice to see Vieira get the same amount of minutes that Kai Havertz has gotten uninterrupted, but I don't think it's going to come. I don't think it's going to come. So when he gets the minutes that he gets, he has to take advantage of them. I'm really disappointed that he got the red card. I don't think there was any malice in it. I don't think it's an unfortunate one, but I am disappointed because I thought that with Kai Havertz being taken off around the 60th minute, that gave Vieira 30 minutes to really make an impact, and he lost that, and he's going to lose 3 games after that. So, there you go. Aman says, I really like Vieira's performance versus Fulham in the second half. The thing about that is that it's hard to take a lot from that because it was game state where we were pushing, just like against Manchester United. We were trying to win the game. So we weren't defending as much, and everything was like attack, 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 which we know that that's pretty much what he needs a free role to be able to create without a lot of defensive responsibility. And our eights don't play that way. Our eights are meant to be more box to box. They do a lot more defensive work. They do a lot of dirty work that usually number 10s don't have to do. And so that performance, although I thought it was really good as well, I do think that we need more from him still. And if Arteta is not going to change the way that he plays, and he's not going to play with a double pivot, I don't think Vieira is ever really going to adapt to that position the way that we want him to. So, I love that performance as well, but those performances come so few and far between. Sometimes it's because Arteta doesn't give him the playing time, and sometimes it's just because Vieira doesn't play very well on the day, Let's see. Blaze says Arteta is ruthless when it comes, take the decision, Arteta is ruthless when it comes, take decision, give chance to players. Nabil says, Jess, what do you think of the links to Julian Brandt and Florian Wirtz? Arteta seems to want Premier League experienced players also. Would you like a striker in the summer or buy a winger for a right wing in January? Brandt, no, I don't want him. On period. I don't want him. Before we got Odegaard, I would have been interested. Now that we have Odegaard, we don't need another player like this. We need a number 8 or / number 6. Like, that's what we need. Somebody that can do the Xhaka role, but better. That's what we need. And until we figure out what's going on with Fabio Vieira and Emile, for me, bringing in another number 10 type of player doesn't really make sense. I haven't seen the links to Florian Wirtz, but I would imagine bringing him in would be very difficult considering the types of teams that are going to be interested in him. I'm sure Bayern want him. I'm sure Chelsea wants him. I'm sure Man City are looking at him as a replacement for De Bruyne. So I think if Arsenal really want Florian Wirtz, it's going to be a very difficult one to get over the line. He looks like the next thing, but also Bundesliga tax, man. Like, am I trying to believe this? Like, I don't always believe in Bundesliga tax, but I'm a little bit like, we already got Project Havertz going on. Do we really want to bring in somebody from that league? I don't know. I'm a little jaded, by that. So I like the Premier League proven thing in some ways because you know what you're going to get. Like, we knew what we were going to get from Trossard. We knew what we were going to get from Ben White. We knew what we were going to get from those players. But I don't necessarily feel like you always have to get players from this league. I think some of the players that we've gotten from outside the league have been good, especially from a defensive standpoint. So it's all about recruitment. But if Arsenal want another number 10, I do feel like they have to figure out what they're doing with Emile and Fabio Vieira first. Are they going to trust them and actually give them the time to actually adapt and do their thing and, kind of get into it? Or are they going to just give them these little minutes here and there? Um, let's see. Winning Way says Vieira has no quality on the ball, maybe a good pass here and there, but it's like 2 appearances out of 6. Nostradamus says it seems like signing a player from the Italian league could be best, as Tommy and Kiwi adapted very well from not world-renowned clubs in Italy. I think defensively this makes a lot of sense. But as we start going forward, I like the players a lot less. I start to like them a lot less. Defenders, though, yeah. Like Italy always has good defenders, right? Here to There says, the bar to change Arteta's mind is so high. Trossard is the second to Saka and GA and couldn't start over Eddie till Eddie got injured. That's tough for Fabio and ESR. That's a really good point. Salman says, big up, Jess. I'm watching you while at work. Keep up the hard work. Oh my gosh, you're at work on a Sunday? Oh no. But thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Winning Way says, Arsenal fans praise players for basic things players should be doing. It's getting ridiculous. Havertz won a header. He's 6'4". He should be scoring. John P says, Martinelli at number 9 for Brazil. Havertz at left back. Do you see any future in any of these ideas? My weird position change idea is Saka left 8 one day. So, unpopular opinion, I don't actually think Havertz playing left back or Martinelli playing number 9 for their national teams is any different than what they do for Arsenal. I think it's all about roles and where you play on the pitch and not necessarily what you are on the team sheet. Havertz played as a left back, but like really in possession, he was a left-sided midfielder. Like that's what he kind of plays for Arsenal anyway. And even Martinelli, often when he plays with Gabriel Jesus, mostly when he plays with Gabriel Jesus or Trossard, when you watch Martinelli play, he plays similarly to the way he played with Brazil. Free, through the middle, switching positions, pop up on the right, pop up on the left. So I don't actually think that they're changing their positions very much. I actually think probably their national team coaches looked and saw what they were doing for Arsenal and said, how can I adapt this to my system? So I don't necessarily feel like Martinelli has to play through the middle to be a striker for Arsenal. I think he basically is one. He just happens to be really good 1v1 as well. He's just a really good forward. I think if you stuck him up front through the 9 position, he would do fine there as well. But I don't necessarily feel like the things that he's doing are not striker-like. He pops up through the middle and scores goals. And Havertz, he doesn't necessarily drop into the left back position, but he pretty much played left center mid for us anyway. He's a very versatile player, and I think because he's responsible off the ball, managers tend to feel comfortable with him playing in positions that are a little bit more off the ball positions, so I don't necessarily feel like there's much change there because you know what I mean? But Saka left 8, I think that's the position that he ends up playing when he's a little bit older and he can't really play on the wing anymore. That's going to extend his career a little bit longer. So yeah. Nostradamus says, you all know Havertz gave away the match-winning penalty in the Turkey game handball. Who cares? Like, be serious for 1 minute. Let's say that's not Havertz and put anybody else's head on that body and have the same thing happen. That is such an unfortunate handball penalty to give away. I don't think anybody in the German national team, his coach or anything, that's not going to change how they felt about his performance. It didn't change how I felt about his performance. Just like when Saliba gave away the handball penalty he did one against Leeds, and he also did one against Chelsea this season. Those are just unfortunate. Sometimes defenders are just in an impossible situation when they're defending. It wasn't like he made a bad tackle or clipped somebody in the box. He was literally just doing his job, and the ball just happened to hit his hand. And by the rules, it's a handball and a penalty. So who cares? Like, people that are trying really hard, like, I don't think that we need to overdo anything with Havertz, but I also think people are going really hard in the other direction, just unnecessarily being negative about a player that scored a goal the other day. And we should be hoping that he builds on that and not trying to bring him down because of a penalty decision that if it happened to anybody that we liked, we would say it was unfortunate. We all know it was unfortunate. We all do. It was crap. Like, you know what I mean? Who cares? It's didn't change the performance. I don't think for anybody that watched it know that he played okay. Amon says Saka and Martinelli roles are different. In my opinion, Saka and Martinelli play as inside forwards, but our Arsenal Teta has them hugging the touchline. And Andrew J says also the process is over 4 years. It has to happen this season for Arteta. And Trini Gunnar says, well said, Jess. So on that, we're going to get out because it's Sunday and I have other things to do as well. Hang out with fam, eat food, all that kind of stuff. But I really enjoyed this, you guys. We did a live show. Yay! So tomorrow we're going back to the normal schedule. Your Monday show will come out. And then on Tuesday, having Alex from A Different Knock on Patreon pod. So that should be fun. So if you guys are not on Patreon, you guys can try for free for 7 days. Link is in the description. But if I don't see you on the Patreon side, you guys will see me tomorrow in a news update. So there you go. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel on your way out. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys. I really love that we got to do a live. This was really fun. I miss these. I really do. Anyways, bye, guys. See you later.